Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, as you can tell from the title of this video, I wanted to share with you guys my experience of being laid off, but still being able to live completely off of my investments. Let's dive right in. Just a little bit of background about me. My name is Anthony Rucker. I'm a South Side of Chicago native, born and raised here. I actually went to college here as well. I went to DePaul University where I got my bachelor's in economics. Went on to start my first company called Rucker Insights, a marketing business, working with startups to build out physical web and social media marketing campaigns. I did that for about the first 2 years out of college, and then I got my first job at a company called Partstown as a project manager. Did that for about a year, went through my first layoff with them, and then a few months later I landed at Northern Trust, where I got a job as a project manager as well, and I was making about $115,000 a year. And you know, for anyone wondering what that kind of boils down to, it's about $6,300 a month after taxes and contributions. I'll fast forward to December of 2025, where I had saved up between my investments, my 401k, my pension, and cash, about $100,000. And I bought my first building. I bought a 2-flat apartment building, and you know, my goal was to house hack. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with house hacking, that just means you buy an apartment building, you live in one unit, and you rent out the others. The income that you get from the rent from your tenants, you use that to pay off some portion of your mortgage, if not the entire thing. And so, yeah, December 2025, I bought this building. It was a foreclosure, and you know, I knew coming into it that it needed a lot of work. And after spending years working on my credit and building up my finances, you know, I was in a really good position to take out 0% interest credit cards, and that's what I did to finance these renovations that I would have to do. When I tell you that everything that could have been wrong with this place, there was something wrong with it, right? There were mice and roaches, which is a personal fear of mine. So I was pretty much, you know, staying at my girlfriend's condo the majority of the time that I was having exterminators come through. Both of the furnaces didn't work. There were significant issues with water in the basement. It was filthy in here from previous owners and tenants who lived here. So I knew that I had my hands full. A month later, fast forward to the layoff, I'm halfway through renovating my building at this point, and I'll never forget, it was like on a Saturday, I got that email from HR, and because this wasn't my first time getting laid off, I kind of knew the drill. Once, you know, I was laid off, thankfully, Northern Trust was very gracious. They gave me, they paid out my bonus, they gave me a severance package, and, you know, they were not going to oppose unemployment. So I was in a good spot. I had about $25,000 in cash as a lump sum that I received from Northern Trust when I was laid off. And then, you know, after buying my building, I still had about $25,000, give or take, in the stock market in reserves. So all in all, I had about $50,000 to work with. So the first thing I knew that I needed to do was get unemployment, and I am receiving unemployment benefits from the state of Illinois for the next number of months while I figure out my job situation. That's about $2,500 a month. I won't walk you guys through my entire portfolio because it's a collection of stock, options, and cryptocurrency. Today, I'm just going to show you kind of the two main drivers, the two stocks that I have put a majority of my money into that's essentially creating income while I'm unemployed. So those two stocks are going to be YBTC and Y Ethereum. They're two ETFs that follow Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I entered into these investments starting back in February initially. Let's hop on over to my phone so I can show you my portfolio in Robinhood. So now we're here in my stock portfolio. So as you can see, my total value is about $45,180 as of the filming of this video, which is April 19th, 2026. It's a Sunday, so the markets are currently closed. As mentioned before, it's a mixture of options, stocks, and crypto. Again, I won't show you everything. I'll just cut right to why BTC and why Ethereum, which are by far my largest holdings. So as you can see here, I own 1,400 shares of YBTC, and I own a little over 4,400 shares of Y Ethereum. So kind of zooming in here, a little bit more about why BTC. As mentioned, it's an ETF that follows Bitcoin. Particularly this fund writes covered calls against Bitcoin, and so the premiums that are collected as a result of those covered calls being written are then distributed out as a weekly dividend to the holders of this ETF. Okay, it's $21.75 a share, and I own 1,400 shares of them, as mentioned, which is a market value of about $30,459. Which this is a margin account, so the market value is about double. So there's about $15,000 cash in this position. Okay. So yeah, let's just take a look. I also wrote some covered calls on this myself, but we can discuss that on a different date. Let me zoom. Let me scroll down here to the history to show you my most recent dividend payout. So that was on April 16th, where I was paid out $273.39. That was about 19 cents per share dividend, right? And I had 1,400 shares, so that's where you get that from, which was pretty sweet. So made about $274 on that one. And then moving over to why ETH, it's at $12.21 per share. It is an ETF that follows the price movements of Ethereum, and this particular strategy also, this particular ETF also writes cover calls against Ethereum, take the premiums that are made from those covered calls and distribute it out as a weekly dividend, right, in similar fashion. So my market value, so again, I have 4,400 shares roughly. The market value comes out to about $54,113. Again, this is a margin account, so the cash position is about half of that. So it's looking at about $27,000 or so dollars in this ETF. Okay. Now just scrolling down to the history again, just so you can see the latest dividend, which is on the 16th here. So the total dividend amount was $634.56, which came out to about a 14-cent per share dividend, which again is pretty nice. So my total dividends from Y Ethereum, Y ETH, and Y BTC came out to a little over $900 this week. So if you multiply that figure times 4, right, you get roughly $3,600, and you add that back to the $2,500 figure that I mentioned earlier. So that puts me right at about $6,100 a month, which is only $200 less than what I was making at Northern Trust. Now, obviously, unemployment only lasts for so long. Typically, it's about 6 months, unless you find a job sooner than that. But as I mentioned before, I have a whole rental property that is in its final stages of renovation and is almost going to be rented out. And so I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to be phasing out the unemployment income with the rental income once that starts to generate. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was of some value to you. yeah, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what other videos you would like to see. I'm definitely thinking about putting out just a little bit more information about these two ETFs, YETH and YBTC, because I really don't see a lot of YouTubers who invest as heavily in them as I have. I've seen a lot of people run for the door, especially as the price of these particular stocks have dropped over the last 6 months to a year. But that's in large part because crypto, largely Bitcoin and Ethereum, are about 40% down from their all-time highs, right? And so it's because of that, I got in. I saw this as a strategic opportunity. I personally see this. I see us right around a bottom in the crypto market, a relative bottom, and so I figured it can't drop any further than where it already has. Of course, it will a little bit, but I felt comfortable enough putting a huge chunk of my severance into it and the remainder of my reserves after buying my property to live completely off of my investments. So if you guys enjoyed this video, again, please do all the things, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.